Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. For today's midweek meta deck, we are playing Ganesh69's Legacy Challenge winning mono-red painter deck from this weekend just gone. Mono-red painter is a deck that aims to put Painter Servant into play naming blue so that we have all these 1-mana counter spells and vindicates, and then once everything is painted that colour, we can Grindstone, activate it on our opponent, and because their library is all the same colour, it will mill them out in one go. So that's the main combo way of winning. But sometimes we're going to be pivoting into backup plans of things like Urza Saga Beatdown alongside Phyrexian Dragon Engine and Breya's Apprentice to try and draw a bunch of cards. Fable the Mirror Breaker is just a solid card that allows us to just play a game without our combo and still win. Especially if we're copying Furies, which is an excellent piece of board clear. In terms of other pieces of removal, we have 3 Lightning Bolts. So between that and the Fury, we have 6 ways of blowing stuff up without our Painter. And then once we get our Painter in, we have all these ways of blowing anything we want up. We can go quite fast because we've got 6 Soul Lands in our deck, so we can use these to power out an early Painter Servant Grindstone combo, especially since we have the Spirit Guides and Lotus Petals too. In order to find our combo pieces, we have Urza Saga, so it's not just a beatdown plan and a way of making artifacts, it also can find us our combo, because this pulls out the Grindstone, and Goblin Engineer can find our Painter Servant and put that into play as well. So we've got a lot of ways of messing with our graveyard between the Engineers and the Welders. This is relatively stock for what a mono-red painter deck looks like online. Obviously in paper, it's pretty much standard to run black in these decks, so you get the Chaos Defiler, which just lets you blow up loads of permanents, but it's not a Magic Online, so everyone's just running mono-red for the most part. The interesting innovation in this deck, to me, is the double Soul Guide Lantern. So if your opponent has things like Emrakul in their deck, you need a Soul Guide Lantern to combo them, so it becomes a 3-card combo. But Soul Guide Lantern is just really useful in the format, whether it's Murktide Regents, opposing Goblin Welders, Reanimator decks, whatever. Uros, there's so many good things for Soul Guide Lantern to find, and it can just become a card. So the opportunity cost of having this in your deck is very low, to be honest. The other thing I'll just quickly mention here is this build has 2 Great Furnace, so we're not leaning as heavily into artifact lands as some builds I've seen that can run 3 or 4. That's because there's obviously a lot of meltdown and stuff, so maybe it makes our engine slightly weaker in game 1 because we have less access to these great furnaces that we can weld around and engineer around, but it means that we are slightly better post-board, and that's kind of how I like to approach matchups generally, so I approve this. We also have a Sokenzan. This is a thing that will sometimes get caught by a wasteland, so it's not free to run this, but when you do get to just channel it and get a couple of spirits with haste, sometimes that can take out a planeswalker that your opponent's not expecting, or provide some emergency blockers that can win you a game. So this card definitely has a lot of uses. Whether or not it should just be another mountain or another Great Furnace, I'm not entirely sure. But some people really like it, some people don't like it. There's a little bit of dispute about it in the painter community. But anyway, that's the deck. Sideboard wise, we've got some tools you'd expect and some tools you might not expect. We've got another red blast effect in case we're playing against blue decks, because when you're playing against blue decks, having more blast effects is pretty great. We've got another Fury for creature decks. We have Fiery Confluence, which can blow up our opponent's artifacts, as well as sweep out little guys if they're on that sort of plan. And it can just be a weird way of doming your opponent. That's not what you bought it in for, but sometimes maybe it'll just be hitting your opponent for 6, and that's enough. We have some graveyard hate in the form of 2 Faerie Macabre and 3 Surgical Extraction. So we're going quite heavy on the graveyard hate between the 2 main deck Soul Guide Lanterns and these. But there's a lot of graveyard decks around in the format at the moment. We have an Ensnaring Bridge, which is something that we can board in as a singleton and find with our Goblin Engineer to go and get this, get the shields up, and we can weld it in and out multiple times. So it's actually quite hard for our opponents to remove this, unless they're removing all of our artifacts and our engineers. We have a Torpor Orb, mainly for things like Doomsday or any decks that are trying to win with Thassa's Oracle, but it's also pretty reasonable when you're looking at things like initiative decks if you can get this out early. And Death and Taxes decks, which have so many come into play effects stacked on top of one another that you want to really be able to shut them down. Then we have a Pithing Needle. This is another thing we can find off Urza Saga. There's various things that you might want to shut down, whether it's a sneak attack or a Grizzlebrand or whatever. This is certainly something that has a lot of use. Pernicious Deed is something that I've seen a few of these bug decks that are coming into the meta a little bit run, so it's quite useful for that. And the card that you didn't expect to see, potentially, is Magus of the Moon. We are a 4 times Urza Saga deck, so Magus of the Moon automatically kills our Sagas, which is a little bit of a nombo. However, the matchups where Magus of the Moon is good, us losing our Urza Saga is a fine price to pay for basically stopping our opponent from playing the game. Now these aren't just for, oh, they've got a few non-basics we might be able to snag. This is for the dedicated sort of lands decks that need to have their mana. This is also pretty good against things like Death Shadow. They can't really win with the Magus of the Moon in play because they tend to have 0 to 1 basics. So this is a big hammer to crack a nut when we need it. So it can just completely swing and change the matchup. And sure, our Urza Sagas will not be very great in that situation, but we can board down on Sagas when we're boarding in some Magus of the Moons if we want to. But we can always, because we're the one casting Magus of the Moon, we get to decide when it happens, so we can decide when we're okay with our Saga dying. At least we get the mana out of it. So maybe our Urza Saga becomes a Lotus Petal that helps us cast a Magus of the Moon. That's kind of the logic there. So that's the deck. And I've played it a little bit before. I'm by no means an expert. If you want to watch somebody who is very good at playing Painter, I highly recommend a YouTuber, Lightwalker, who's also in the Paint Discord. I will link their channel below so you can have a little look, because their content is really fun as well. And they're great at playing Painter, so definitely watch them if you want to see some Painter action. Alright, before we jump in, remember to like and subscribe, and at the end of the video, why not drop me a comment? And how about checking out my Patreon link below? My card just failed its MOT today, so I wouldn't mind if people want to give me some money on Patreon for like my Green Black Turbo Depths guide and the articles I publish on there. If you got the money to spare, I like it, but you know, at the end of the day, just watch the content, enjoy Legacy, and play Legacy yourself. Alright, let's get to playing some Legacy. Alright, we're on the draw here. We've got a turn 3 combo if we want it. Seems fine to me. We also can play a little bit of a Saga game in the build up to that. We've got some graveyard hate if that's the thing we actually want. I think it's more or less free for us to lead on the Saga here and deploy the Soulguide Lantern. Mental misstep, sure. Interesting. Or sorry, minor misstep. I keep calling it mental misstep. So, alright, we're looking at Reanimator here. Him to Turak. Alright, what's it going to be? Okay. That's okay. So we can drop this and the Painter and go for the win next turn. We'll name blue here in case we draw a red blast and the mana to cast it. Seems unlikely we're going to draw both. But we might need to pivot into something if they get rid of our Saga. We don't care about Forcibles, it's okay to name blue here. It just means that if something goes wrong with like our Grindstone for some reason, then at least we've got the Painter on the right colour to enable loads of cards in our deck to be useful. 2 mana here, what is this going to be? Prismatic Ending? Sure. Okay. So this time we can make a guy. We put them to the test and they managed to win the test there. They were very keen about doing our Soulguide Lantern in, which is interesting to me. We'll take the Soulguide Lantern here. And we'll get rid of this Prismatic Ending. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So they can play a... Yeah, they can go into a Murktide region if that's the thing they have quite easily. We could Soulguide Lantern them now to stop them doing that, but that's going to weaken our clock. So I think we want to keep this in play for now. Minor misstep on the Lantern is very interesting. White, black, blue. Teferi Time Raveler. Okay, so probably having our Construct token bounce. They could bounce our Urza Saga and set that back, but they will lose their Teferi if they do that unless they've got a Plow or a Prismatic Ending, which is quite possible. Okay, they've just hit the token there. Not ideal, but fine. We can grind our way into this game. Inquisition of Kozilek. So I'm curious what we lose here. Could be the Welder. Could be the Blast. I think it's unlikely to be the Dragon Engine, but not impossible. I would not take the Dragon Engine. I'd probably be leaning on, depending on what my hand was, it'd be the Blast or the Welder. Because the Welder lets us make some tokens with the Saga and then start bringing back some of the things. So we can get some more Soulguide Lanterns and keep their graveyard in check if that's the thing they care about. And we can work towards doing a Dragon Engine Weld chain where we just keep doing it. Yeah, so there's the Blast. Opponent's got 2 cards in hand. Alright, so we're going to make a token now so that we can also deploy the Welder. This will turn on our metalcraft. And then next turn we can deploy an engine and start revving it if we want to. Or we can just keep making some more Urza Saga stuff. It's going to be a Murktide. It is a Murktide. Okay. So we had an option of pinning our Saga off, but again, I think we're in the thing of we want to have... Sorry, pinning our Saga Lantern off. But the thing is, we want to have a lot of artifacts because we have a construct token that we're doing stuff with, and we have a welder that we need lots of food for. Another welder. They kill us in 2 hits anyway, so let's just make our token and go searching. Probably for the Grindstone here. Attacking here doesn't feel amazing to me, as you've probably guessed. So we could try and draw a card with our Lantern here. How worthwhile do I think that would realistically be? We will need some more cards in the near future, as well as more mana. But if we play the Welder now, we might be able to do some more shenanigans next turn. I think we do have to pop the Lantern here. Try and find a land or a painter here, because we kind of need 2 cards to get there. And these creatures aren't attacking right now. We're probably not going to have lethal. Okay, so we found a mountain. That means we can also deploy the Welder. So we have some mana here. Not quite enough to be doing Painter Grindstone next turn though. So we're going to need some help somewhere along the lines here. We've got a whole bunch of red blasts we can draw. Thinking back to when we didn't Soul Guide Lantern away our opponent's thing and gave me the opportunity to do a Murktide. But they had an opportunity to do that the turn before and didn't. And also we had a bunch of stuff that cares about artifacts, so I'm still okay with that decision. If we want to end a turn, we can turn one of our constructs into a Soul Guide Lantern. I think I will do that. This gives us a potential another draw. We basically have to combo now, so if our opponent's got a prismatic ending to hit this Grindstone now, then that's probably going to be lights out for us unless we draw the red elemental blast. But we need as many looks at as many things as possible this turn. So I think having the option of doing the Saga Lantern makes sense. Let's get rid of that Flooded Strand. Not that's going to make a difference really. Alright, over to us. We found the red blast. Interesting. Question is, our opponent could have a discard spell and they could have fired it off in our draw step, but they didn't, which makes me think they don't have a discard spell. So do we just attack the Teferi and try and bait some action out here? Because if they'd have had a discard spell, they would have used it here. I think we go to attacks. This will attack Teferi. So we can do this on our opponent's upkeep if the Teferi dies. That's how we want to play this game. How many counter spells do we think our opponent has here? I think we go for Phyrexian Dragon Engine. Our opponent hasn't given us any reason to believe they're playing things like Daisies. We haven't seen Wastelands, we haven't seen the usual tempo-y stuff. We've just seen control-y cards like Teferi. We're hoping to bait something out with this Dragon Engine. We can weld it back and forth if we need more cards. So we could shoot this now and then welder it to try and get 3 more looks, which could find us a land and another blast. I think that's probably where we need to go here. Let's try and blast this. If this doesn't work, we have to do our welder shenanigans. Oh, it worked. Huh. That was a surprise. That was a real surprise. I don't think we need to welder this around just yet. We can do it on our opponent's turn. Although if we'd have done it earlier, maybe we'd have hit a land that we could have played that turn. That might have been a slightly shrewder move. Have they got a Brazen Borrower here? They do not. Okay, so we might be getting another turn. Okay, so let's exchange our Dragon Engine for a Soul Guide Lantern. Swords to Plowshares targeting our Dragon Engine. Okay, we can just do the same move again now. We've got another piece of removal here. Get rid of this Murktide, I suppose. So then this plow fizzles, and this welder does nothing. Are they going to kill our guys before we untap? Our Ancient Tomb... Oh, okay. They're just scooping it up because we've got this draw 3 cards a turn engine running. 1, 2, 3. Not a bad set, and we get the 1 for turn. Not a bad selection of cards we're getting in the near future. We can probably kill our opponent in 2 turns. Alright. So, what do we want? I think we want a Pyroblast. Our opponent showed us a lot of non-basics, but I think it's quite likely they have basics in there. A Pithing Needle for something like Teferi could be an option. Fury kills Planeswalkers, so I do like it here. Our opponent's got some graveyard stuff, but not that much graveyard stuff. So I think we can drop one of our lanterns. If you want this. Pyroblast. Their threats are basically just pyroblastable stuff. Do I want to change anything else? Honestly, I don't think so. I think we're in a reasonable spot there. I think there was a couple of different plays in that round that we could have done slightly better. I think we could have done our Dragon Engine stuff on our turn to play around a potential Brazen Borrower. That we could maybe draw a land, so like a red source and a Bolt or a Pyroblast. But forcing our opponent to use their removal in their turn was also pretty valid too. And we could have wiped the graveyard for the Murktide and shrunk our own guys earlier. Those are the 2 different plays I think that we could have made. Okay, so our opponent is on the play. This is our opening hand. We can go Saga, token, token, and then just do it all over again. And if they're a control deck, they're going to struggle a little bit with Sagas as a general rule. So we'll keep this. I think in most decks that have an Urza Saga, it's the best card in the deck. Because it's just such a powerful tool. So we'll lead off on the Saga so we can start cranking out tokens next turn. Alright, they played another fetch land and they're cracking. Underground Sea. Inquisition of Kozilek. What would you like to take? Our main plan involves just playing our lands here. So this Inquisition, not necessarily going to do it. I'm also curious about the Inquisitions being the discard of choice. Maybe they do have Thoughtseize as well. But they just went with Inquisitions over Duresses. For like the 5 to 8 slots. Alright, so we lost one of our engineers. That's not how I want to play this game. Pyroblast is very nice. Play our Ancient Tomb and pass the turn. In our opponent's turn, we will make a construct token. Next turn, we can play a Welder or we can hold up Pyroblast. We'll see what our opponent does here. If they play a Teferi and bounce it, that's not actually that good because we make a token in response and kill their Teferi. It does slow us down a bit. That's not the end of the world for us. In terms of actual cards, we'll be doing alright there. Snapcaster Mage with an Inquisition of Kozilek. Okay, you can take out our other engineer. Like I said, that's not what this game is about. However, if they're doing this to then dress us down and give us a bad time, then fair enough, I suppose. Right, so there's a Goblin Engineer. Giving a lot of respect to the old engineer there from our opponent. It's pretty reasonable. Let's make a guy. Untap, draw a card. Make another guy. What do I like here? I think I want the Mox Opal so I can play Pyroblast and Welder this turn. Alternatively, we could play the Saga out. I just want to keep the Saga train running if I think that's going to be good. Sure, I think we'll play out the Saga here. This way we can play the Saga and hold up Red Blast here. Attack with our 3/3. I think given this board, it's better for us to get the Pyroblast being active as it is rather than trying to Welder. Because we don't really have great things to Welder right now. 3 mana. What does this do? Exile target non-land permanent. Do some stuff. Alright. Exile target non-land permanent with mana value 1 or less. Exile up to 2 cards from a single graveyard. You gain some life. And targeting our construct token. I think we will try and lightning bolt their Kaya now. Spell Pierce. Sure, we cannot pay. How important is killing this Kaya to me? Is an important question. Right, so let's jam this. I think I want to get this off the board. Let's destroy this. Go to attacks. Let's attack their Kaya. If we want to play the Welder, we have to make a construct now. And that plays into Wrath a bit too much for my liking. Again, the Welder doesn't have any food in our graveyard anyway, so we may as well just ride this construct train till we can kind of get there. Basic Swamp. It's a nice Mirage Swamp. I do like the Mirage lands. Dress down, obviously going to be a bit of a pain here, but I'm sure we can live through that. Dealt ourselves a lot of damage here, but our opponent is a control deck, so our life total is very much a resource here. What does this get us? We could get the Soul Guide Lantern here. I like the Lantern more than the... Yeah, I'm going to... We'll get rid of the spell, because that's when they can Snapcaster. And then we'll move to attacks. Getting dressed down. We just smashed them for a big chunk. Oh, that was a nice one. Okay, so we can play out our city and play this Fable. We've just got so many resources here. Probably should have used our Mox Opal to play that and left our mountain open. Sure, Snapcaster Mage. Didn't have any targets in there. Just a little Ambush Viper. We could play a Welder here, but again, I don't think it's necessary. Our board is enormous. I'd rather have something in hand to pitch to the Fable, potentially. We don't care if I have a Murktide. Alright, we just got it there. So the deck with 8 Pyroblasts in, pretty good against the blue deck. Also the deck with all these Urza Saga, pretty good against the control deck. Because control really struggles against Urza Saga. It doesn't have something like a dress down or a clean answer to like the whole thing. Alright, we'll want to know. I think there's definitely some learning that can be done from that one round. There's definitely a few tweaks to how I played. I think I was quite happy with how I played this second game. But I mentioned the 2 bits in the first game that I would have maybe thought. I think one of them probably ended up being right, but the other one maybe should have done things a little bit differently. Alright, let's go to round 2. We are on the play for round 2. How do I feel about this one? Our hand doesn't really do anything until turn 3, right? We can play a Fail the Mirror Breaker on 3, but that's a lot of time to just be twiddling our thumbs. I think we should mulligan for a bit of business here. Ugh, I don't really like this one very much either. If one of these was an Urza Saga, I'd be pretty happy, but this whole hand is just mana plus Servant, so I think we have to mulligan this. Alright, this is a pretty tasty hand. We'll keep this one. We've got to work out what's going back where. So we want to keep the Fable, and we want to keep the Painter, keep 2 lands. So 2 of these 3 cards have got to go. Is it the Pyroblast or is it the Bolt? Which one of these would we rather have? I think I might prefer the Bolt here. Just in the blind. Like, yes, we have a Painter, so maybe we can get the Pyroblast to do its thing. But we're kind of looking at getting our Bolt on turn 1 and then our Fable on turn 2. That's our sort of safer plan here. And we've got a lot more Pyroblast in our deck anyway. If our opponent plays like a Dork, like a Mana Dork or something, we get an option to kill it here. That's going to be pretty good for us. Or we can always just feed it to the Fable and just say no. Once upon a time. Okay, so we're looking at a green deck where our Pyroblast might not have been as good anyway. That's nice to see. Fiend Artisan. So we're looking at Newton Elves here. There's Windswept Teeth. What are you going to find us? Oh, I was literally just talking about doing this. Let's bolt the bird. I think we are more incentivized to play this Fable than we are playing our Painter and having a mana up. So we get this guy out. This is going to give us a load more mana to work with, hopefully. They can play a Fiend Artisan as a 2-2, and we can offer a trade. And I'm pretty happy to take that trade, because we get a treasure out of it, they lose their Fiend Artisan. That's worthwhile to me. A Caracas, that shouldn't really impact us. They can't cast a Fiend Artisan. A Natural Collector Roof. That's a bit gross. Alright. Yes, we've got plenty of lands in our deck. We're just going to bin off these 2 and try and find something a bit more useful here. Well, they're definitely not going to trade here, that's for sure. Like, we could go get the Grindstone here, and that gives us the win if we can find like a welder. Well, we can welder this in if we can get that going. But if we just put a Phyrexian Dragon Engine, we can just get a bunch of value that way by weldering away our thing. I think we just want the Dragon Engine here. We could just deploy this Painted Servant right now. Yeah, I'm down for that. Just name blue. Because next turn we're going to be getting rid of our hand by turning our treasure token into a Phyrexian Dragon Engine. We're probably not comboing them in the near future, but we could find something like a Fury and we can clean out some guys. If they play this Fiend Artisan and nothing else and we draw a Fury, we can kill both their creatures. Because when Fiend Artisan is checking, it's only going to have power 2, so it will die. Outland Liberator. So they've drawn both of their singletons that are good against our deck. It's a real doozy. Is this going to be the Fiend Artisan? It is, sure. So I'd very much like to draw our Phyrexian Dragon, our Fury and red card here off of our Phyrexian Dragon Engine. Let's see what we have. We've got some good draws in our deck though. So we flip over our little lad. I don't think we are looking at doing stuff with this Welder. I think we're better off just get our Dragon Engine back in exchange for this treasure token. It doesn't do anything right now. Okay, so we can deploy another Engineer. Certainly doesn't do nothing. So we can attack with our Shaman here if we want to. And any creature they block with will die to it. How do we feel about any creature they block with dying? It'll make their Fiend Artisan bigger, but if we kill this, that's helpful. If we kill this, that's also helpful. I think it's worth attacking with the Goblin Shaman here. And then we'll play a spell on the second main so that we can stop this and Liberator from flipping. I think they're just going to take 2. They got 17 life. They got loads to work with. It'd be weird if they blocked. 2. Play this. Play the Engineer. What do we want in our graveyard at this point? I guess the Grindstone is kind of useful if we can clear the stuff. Or we could just be doing Breya's Apprentice lines here and just cycling them round so that we're getting loads of value every single time. Would I rather do that, or would I rather have the Grindstones that if we find the Fury we can just win the game? Interesting choice. I think I'll take the Grindstone. Maybe that's wrong and we're supposed to just do the Breya's Apprentice. We've played a spell so our opponent won't flip their Outland Liberator, so if they want to blow something up they have to sack it. But destroying our Phyrexian Dragon Engine doesn't really help. We've got a reasonable amount of other things we can do. So what we're going to probably be doing here is copying our Phyrexian Dragon Engine, sending 2 Dragon Engines at our opponent. That's 8 damage on its own. But they can use the first strike to their advantage in terms of the size that their Fiend Artisan will become if it's blocking our 2/2. That's something we have to keep in mind. We are also under threat from just the natural order just being a big scary thing for us to have to deal with. So you can go and get an Atraxa. At this point I don't think they can win with a Crater Hoof. But if they were to play a Dryad Arbor and then do a Crater Hoof, that's probably good. Once upon a time, that's pretty good for us. That says that our opponent doesn't have anything that they want right now, and they're in search of something else. An Endurance. And a Wasteland. That fortunately doesn't impact us right now. I don't think we're getting attacked here. Okay. Oh, a Lightning Bolt. How much mana do we have here? This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana. So we go down to 5 mana for the Lightning Bolt. 4 mana to copy an Engineer. Down to 3 mana to put the Grindstone in, and then we kill them. I think we have the game here. Our opponent's only got 2 cards in hand. I think we can go for it here. The only problem is they have the Outland Liberator. That is a real potential problem with this plan. We can kill them next turn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana. So 1 mana to copy this is 5. Spend another mana. do this and another mana for this to kill this. Yeah, we're kind of at the mercy of the Outland Liberator then. That is a little bit awkward. We're going to attacks. Then we send in the Dragon Engine. If the Dragon Engine dies, we can do some interesting stuff with it. And it will trade with a bunch of these guys anyway. I think we do want our treasure token here. Even though our guy can potentially die here because of the endurance. I think the treasure is going to be worth more to us as this game goes on. Because we are 1 mana shy of being able to do it all right now. Just blocking that and taking 4. So we need to cast our Lightning Bolt now to stop our opponent from being able to flip their Outland Liberator and attack with it. So we'll blow up this Collector Roof. So we'll play our Ancient Tomb. It is kind of on board what we can do here. So our opponent shouldn't be firing off this Wasteland right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is 1, 2, and then a 3 for the Grindstone. Yeah, so we need 1 more mana to win this game. Oh, they've made a huge mistake here. This was an on-board trick, and now we get to kill them unless they have an endurance in hand. So this copies our Engineer. We'll use the Engineer's ability. We'll go and get the other Grindstone. And we will activate this. Get back our Grindstone, pitching our Dragon Engine. Then we will activate Grindstone, target our opponent using this mana and these 2 manas here. Do they have another Endurance? They did not have another Endurance. They just misplayed into our onboard thing. Now there's a lot of wheels going on here, so it's certainly not unreasonable to make that mistake. But yeah, they kind of gave us a break here. But if they didn't have anything going on, then we can get them the next turn because we'll have more mana. So maybe they were just hoping that we missed it and they didn't really have anything. But they did have another draw they could take still. Right, sideboarding. Our opponent is like a mini little creature deck. Just doing creature things. So Fiery Confluence is probably going to be good at smashing out a load of guys. The Fury is going to be nice here. Ensnaring Bridge is probably going to be pretty useful too. It's got these 3 things. Do you want something like a Pithing Needle or a Torpor Orb? Like some of their scariest things aren't even... Like, yes, they have a Crater Hoof and they have the tracks so that they can natural order into. But the really scary things for us are like Collector Roof and Liberator, that sort of stuff, which isn't really getting caught up by Torpor Orb. We could bring in Pithing Needle to stop our opponent's Fiend Artisans. That's not unreasonable. We've got these 3 things. I think our Red Blasts are pretty weak in this matchup, so I think we're looking at trimming a bunch of Red Blasts here. Is it worth still having 2 for when we have Painter? I think so. We can always loot them away. I don't think we want the Magus here either. Graveyard Hate isn't terrible in this matchup, so I think leaving in the 2 Soul Guide Lanterns makes some sense because, you know, they've got Ramanap Excavator, Wasteland combo, they've got Fiend Artisans. I wouldn't mind having some just useful artifacts that we can bin off if we need to. Force of Vigor is going to be a thing they use to get us. I don't think we want Magus of the Moon here. I'm going to submit like this. We've just got decent amount of creature removal, play some good stuff, eventually win the game. Like, we weren't really on the Painter plan for a lot of that game. It just kind of presented itself to us, which is one of the powerful things about this deck. You can play a pretty good beatdown plan and then pivot. Against the creature matchup, having Fury and Lightning Bolt in your opener is pretty tasty, to be honest. I think we'll keep this on the draw. I'd rather this Great Furnace was a mountain, but maybe we can do some Welder shenanigans in a bit. Once upon a time, let's see how our opponent wants to begin the game. So the Soul Guide Lanterns are good for stopping your opponent's endurance if they have one in hand. Palace Jailer. Alright, so they've got more white mana than expected. I thought they were just running white for like as the Caracas. Breya's Apprentice is quite a nice way to reload in the near future. I think I'll get this Welder up and running. This is worth a removal spell from our opponent, for sure. It's not quite where our game plan is at right now, but as the game goes on, it'll end up just looping our Breya's Apprentice, which should be pretty lethal for our opponent. So we've got Bayou over there. A Noble Hierarch. Not that exciting to me. Okay, over to us. This can give them a Palace Jailer on the following turn, so I would quite like to avoid that as a thing that happens. So I think we are on the play out Welder here. We don't want our opponent to just have an easy route to making the Monarch. I think we'll take this out so they can't deploy the initiative, the Monarchy next turn. Like, we could have attacked for one and they're not going to block with their Noble Hierarch. But we should have done that at least just to see if they would make that chump block. But 99% of the time I don't think that's going to happen. So now we have 2 creatures. So Palace Jailer on its own might not be enough if we have another piece of removal, which we do. So we might be able to get the Monarch if our opponent managed to put the Palace Jailer into play. Obviously they would need some sort of Soul Land, which seems like not what their deck does. But their build is a little bit different with the Jailer and stuff. So this could have some other little wrinkles in it that we're unaware of. A Fiend Artisan. And a Cradle. We got another creature or nothing. So we have a pretty interesting trick we can pull here. We can swing with these Welders and then get rid of the creature and kill the Artisan if we want to trade a Welder for a Fiend Artisan, which I think we probably do because this represents... this represents a Collector Roof in the near future. Sure. So now we will deploy Saga Lantern. Get rid of this creature. Kills their Fiend Artisan. I think I want to draw this and see if we can find another land, to be honest. We did not find another land. Okay. But we shut off their Cradle there. We stopped them being able to get Collector Roof this turn easily. And they can still have land, Green Sun Zenith, and make us feel bad about that. Mother of Runes. Okay. That's something that demands an answer pretty sharpish. Alright. So this Fury is looking pretty good in our hand. We have to work out what we're pitching to it, is the question. We could play a Painter's Servant on red, pitch our other Painter's Servant to... Or we could just pitch this Red Elemental Blast, but that's going to be useful down the line is the only problem. Or we could play the Painter, pitch... Yeah, okay, this is the plan I like. So we go red, red... Oh, the problem is our Red Blast, it looks really bad if we do this. If we deploy the Painter, we have to Fury this turn. Maybe we're supposed to Fury... Yeah, okay, I think we're supposed to Fury pitching Red Blast and then use a Spirit Guide to play the Breya's Apprentice. And then we will cast this. And we'll hold up our guy so we can turn it into... So we can just keep cycling these guys around. Alright, I like the spot we're in. But our opponent's deck has got some pretty good mid-rangey type cards in. But just keeping this Cradle off of being able to do anything is pretty strong. Alright, our opponents just had enough. They didn't like getting their board furied, so we are 2-0. We didn't even need to do Painter shenanigans really there. I think if we played that turn differently, where we played the Painter to pitch our second Painter to the Fury, I think our opponent probably would still scoop. But obviously the Goblin Welder plus Breya's Apprentice represents an enormous amount of card advantage that we can accrue over every single turn, and our opponent's deck is fundamentally a fair deck that just has a natural order button in it. So when we're just playing against the fair side of their deck, the thing we're doing here, drawing all these extra cards, is just going to absolutely bury them because we're already so far ahead. So we are 2-0. Let's go to round 3. Our opponents revealed a Yorion and they're on the play here. Our hand is very susceptible to a Wasteland. So if they're on the D&T side of things, I don't think we can keep this hand, although Fury is good here. But we're kind of all in on playing this turn 1 Fable. I think we should mulligan and try and find a basic mountain. Alright, this is pretty reasonable. I think we do without the Furnace for now. So we have Lightning Bolt, we have Painter's Servant plus thingy. Okay, so they're on a blue Yorion build. So this means we're going to lead off with the Saga, I think. And we will deploy this Lotus Petal so we have access to Pyroblast and Lightning Bolt. So from our opponent's side of the board, we look like a Saga Storm deck list, potentially. Could be a Painter deck. Could be 8 cast. There's a lot of things that we are representing to our opponent now. Whereas if we jam the Mountain and a Lotus Petal, that's kind of going to give our opponent an idea. I don't think this is worth burning a Pyroblast on. We want to use our Pyroblast potentially to get our Painter's Servant into play. We'll jam our Painter's Servant here. We have a Pyroblast backup here, and we have the win next turn. Right, here's a Force of Will. We will say no to Force of Will. What do they picture? Brainstorm. Okay. So our opponent needs to answer this Painter's Servant, or we can grind them out. Prismatic Ending is certainly something they can have here, which should be sad. They did go for the Force of Will, but maybe I know they didn't have the... Okay, so no Prismatic Ending here. Is this going to be... Fail the Mirror Breaker. Okay, that doesn't interact with what we're doing here. Interesting. Do they have an Endurance in hand? Right, so we got a Grindstone here. And we play our Ancient Tomb. 1, 2, 3. And we activate it and grind them. They're conceding before we grind them because they don't want us to see their deck, which is the correct play. So we're looking at a Yorion Zenith type deck. So I would like a Pyroblast. I don't think Magus of the Moon is actually where we want to be here. Fury is pretty good against some of their things. Torpor Orb jammed up a bunch of their stuff, but kind of jams up our own stuff a lot more, so I don't think we want that either. It's a case of, do we want the Fury to help nail some Planeswalkers, or do we just want this Pyroblast? I think it's probably just the Pyroblast. They have Uros and things, so Soul Red Lantern are useful in those sorts of grinding things. I think we probably do want... Do we want both? I think Lightning Bolt might be slightly weaker here, so I think we can board that out for the Pyroblast. I think that's probably all we need. We could board in someone like Pithing Needle for the likes of Nasa or Teferi. And we could board in Fury to help beat those and just be a big threat if required. So actually no, our opponent is a Greenstone Zenith deck, right? So we need the Lightning Bolt to deal with the Collector that our opponent's going to have. So if we want these 2 cards, we need to find some space here. This game is probably going a bit slower. I don't think we're going to necessarily want a Mox Opal. And maybe we do have to trim one of these Soul Red Lanterns, just because we want to get our things in the blow up Collector Roof. And they do hit Planeswalkers too. Yeah, we'll try like this. This looks like a pretty good keep. We can do another Saga game into trying to paint and kill them. So we can sort of get our opponent's resources taxed on our Saga first. Because I don't think we want to race for the kill here. Underground Sea. So our opponent is full on 5-color Yorion. Maybe we did want the Magus of the Moon. But it's just so bad, like, taking our Urza Sagas out. They did not shuffle off their Ponder. What do we want here? We can just start the game with a Saga and start pumping up tokens. I think that's probably where I want to be. We can play this Lotus Petal for potential Pyroblasts or Lightning Bolts. So if they were to naturally draw a Collector Roof, we could bolt it this turn. As long as we float the mana before it comes into play. Right, so there's our Ancient Tomb. Let's make some constructs. Dress Down is something our opponent could definitely have in their deck. Cracking a Windswept Heath at the end of turn. We're going to see Orcish Bowmasters, perhaps. We have the Lotus Petal to kind of play around it, being able to ping our guy for one. If we had our guy. Just a fetch end of turn. So we're just clearing the cards in the Ponder. So anyone in one of the cards in the Ponder. Ooh, a Mystic Sanctuary. Staff of the Storyteller. Okay. Let's make a guy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mana. So we don't have enough to defend our Painter's Servant here. So I think we are just going to make another guy. So again, the Grindstone here is an interesting one because it does give our opponents something to Prismatic Ending. But I think we've got some pretty meaty threats on board right now. So we'll jam out our mountain here. We'll go to attacks. Say hello to my little construct. I think we'll just hold up Pyroblast and Lightning Bolt here. We're just looking for a bit more mana. We've got threats in place. Our opponent's going to have to tap some mana on their turn to answer our constructs. Alright, our opponent's token is probably back on blocks now. They didn't draw on their turn, they didn't make a land drop. Interesting that both of those things occurred. Player's Mountain. We'll go to attacks. So we could play the Painted Servant for 1 more damage here. But what I want to do is kind of tax some of our opponent's other resources. Swords to Plowshares. Sure. Okay, so that's 1 removal spell gone. If we play out the Painter, it might shift how they're planning on using their spells. We can go for Painted Servant with double Pyroblast back up here. Alright, they're just scooping up. We have the potential combo right now, but they burned their plow on our construct, so that's one of the reasons we did that, because they're going to be like, we have to control the board. I don't think they needed to do that. It could have just taken 4 and gone to 11 and then see what happens. But if this resolves, I don't think we even go for it right now. I think we wait till we untap so we can do it with Pyroblasts. Like, we have 2 Pyroblasts to counter any spells that killed our guys, apart from the Sweeper. But yeah, we're 3-0, doing pretty well. Let's go to round 4. We're on the play for round 4. This is our opening hand. So we've got some engineer lines. We can start grinding away using our Mox Opal. Go and get the Dragon Engine. This seems fine. Doesn't seem exciting, but we've got anti-blue tech. We've got anti-creature tech. And we've kind of got a game plan. So I'm okay with this hand. We can deploy the engineer on turn 1 if we want to try and leverage going off as quick as possible, but that will reduce our options of what we pitch to our Fury. So a tough choice, that one. I don't think we play the turn 1 engineer. Can we just play out our mountain? Do we play out the Mox Opal in case they're playing some sort of Trinisphere or Chalice on 0? Then we'll play out the Mox. An island. Alright. That does change things a little bit, doesn't it? I think we will jam this engineer. So now we have an option of, are we just going for the combo here, or are we going for the Dragon Engine? Because we have a Pyroblast here, I'm going to go for the Grindstone. Try and get this game won in the near future. 1, 2, 3. This won't be active unless we draw another. So something like a Great Furnace would be an interesting draw for us. So we need 6 mana to go off. So 2, 3, 4. Great Furnace would turn this on. So that'd be 5, 6. Ancient Tomb also does it. Stoneforge Mystic. So we have an answer to this with our Fury. What are they going to find? They get a Shuko. They get a Cauldra. Okay. If they got Shuko, they'd tell us a bit more about their deck. City of Traitors. This does it provided we don't have to Pyroblast something. Let's play out a Painted Servant here. We will name Blue. Play out City of Traitors here. So we can go for it now, right? So we can turn this into the Grindstone and then use this. Our opponent's got no mana available. I think it's probably worth going for here. Sacrifice this. Get our Grindstone back. Solitude is the thing that beats us here. Alright, so scooping it up. They didn't have Solitude. Okay, are they a Cephala Breakfast deck, or are they a sort of just generically Stoneblade type thing? Tough to say. Ensnaring Bridge is something that I'm somewhat interested in if they are going down the Cauldron. Maybe they thought they were already losing as well, so maybe that seems weird to just think they're losing. But if you can't answer an engineer, maybe. Honestly, Pyroblast is one of the few things that I'm considering here. I think we can probably trim a Saga Lantern for a Pyroblast And then, do we want Fury to try and kill their stone forges and potential other bits and pieces if they have them? If they are breakfast, we're going to want some graveyard hate, but we don't know if they're breakfast. So maybe we want to keep the Saga Lantern in just in case they are breakfast. I'm looking at boarding out Mox. Something like this. So we've got a load of blue spells to hit their thing in case they are that. I don't think we want to board into a full anti-breakfast thing and just really weaken ourselves if our opponent is just sort of like an Esper Stoneblade or blue-white Stonebladey, control-y or mid-rangey type deck. Opponent's got 61 cards in their deck. We've got a pretty good setup for Phyrexian Dragon Engine loots. We've got an answer to a Stoneforge or Cephalid breakfast type start. I think we can keep this on. We can lead out with a Welder, and then we can sort of play it by ear from that point onwards. Prismatic Vista. Okay. Oh, that Great Furnace is a really nice draw here. That allows us to do Phyrexian Dragon Engine stuff pretty early on. But I will play out this mountain first. Our opponent could be running some amount of wastelands I didn't really want to get jammed up by. Not yet, anyway. There's the Vista. A Brainstorm, sure. So we're not going to face a Stoneforge Mystic this turn, but we might be looking at our opponent playing a combo this turn with the Cephalid Illusionist. So not this turn, but for the next turn, sorry. So when we get to our turn, which is what I'm thinking about now, is what are we likely to play and what are we likely to play around. If they are a breakfast deck, we're going to want to keep up red source, so at least we have a lightning bolt to keep them honest. So what does that look like for us? So we play out this Great Furnace. I don't think they're going to be a Daze deck. We could play out this Welder, or we could play out this Grindstone. Got two Grindstones. I'm going to play out a Grindstone here. I think we'll attack with Welder for one. Hold open this Lightning Bolt. That way if they play Nomads and Cephalid Illusionist, we at least have some interaction. Again, they might not be a breakfast deck at all. Two islands. It's quite a lot of islands for the Hannah Plains. I'm not really thinking that they're a breakfast deck here. They tend to have a lot more non-basics. There's a Stoneforge. We'll see what they get here. Just going to be the Cauldra. Here's the Cauldra. Feels like our opponent is going for a... Oh no, I thought they were going to misstep us there, but look like they just F6 straight through that. Interesting. Okay, so we can deploy this Phyrexian Dragon Engine now. So we have an option of potentially playing a Welder. It feels like our opponent, if they didn't have any interaction then, it feels like they're probably on the line of sweeping up our board with like a Meltdown or something, or a Wrath. Alright, so it's not going to be a Supreme Verdict. So we might have gotten away with playing our Welder, but we don't need to play out all of our stuff necessarily here. They could Prismatic Ending our Dragon Engine, which would actually be really good against us right now, because we're hoping to leverage this for more cards at some point. Alright, just no plays. Let's play a Soul Red Lantern. We can take our opponent's Brainstorm here, and then we can start fiddling around with the Dragon Engine. A Snapcaster Mage. Sure. Just going to target the Brainstorm. And casting the Brainstorm. We'll get rid of one of their lands. Draw a card using the other mana we've got floating. So we can attack with this Phyrexian Dragon guy. It's got double strike, so it can chew for a Snapcaster Mage if needs be. Hits for a decent chunk as well. I think we'll play out the Ancient Tomb here. And I'm going to regret playing this Welder out. I'll play the Welder here. So what we might be doing is grindstoning ourselves, and if we find a painter we can just go, which would be pretty amusing. Alright, let's grindstone ourselves here. Okay, get Painter Servant in there. This means if they kill our Painter Servant we can just keep grindstone, Dragon Engine our way through. If they don't kill the Painter then we have the kill. 4 cards in hand. One of them probably isn't a Cauldron. They probably put it back with a Brainstorm. They have 1 card that they could Brainstorm. They got 1 card on top of their library, which could be the Cauldron that was in their hand earlier. So I think it's safe to assume they don't have a Cauldron in hand as a general rule. Alright. What we can also do is put in the Dragon Engine on our turn so that we have more looks at something like a Red Blast. Right, they're cracking their Vista. To Fairy? Or a Meltdown? A Meltdown. That's pretty savage. Oh, and they had the Plow for the Welder. Yikes. Yeah, it all turned around pretty bad for us there. Yikes. It's not how we drew it up, that one. So this costs 5 to unearth. Play this one out. Play this. We can unearth the Dragon Engine for red, red. 1, 2. So this will get us a new group of cards. Alright. Not unhelpful. Now our opponent's down to 2 cards. So we can play Painter, and then play Painter, and then Grindstone them. Jason Mind Sculptor. Don't really care about that one. Like, the Brainstorm is obviously very powerful, but if they're tapping their mana down, that's less interaction they're going to have with us. Sure, we'll take a hit here. There's a Saga. Is that better than playing out on Mountain? I think so. Let's cast ourselves a Painter's Servant. Got Force of Will over there. Or a Plow. They need to have Force of Will and Plow, I think, this turn. There's the Force of Will, pitching the Ponder. Alright, let's try another one. Straight up in there. We'll do this now. Alright. We got the match there. Pretty good. So we are 4-0. We are absolutely smashing it. Let's have a look. We are 4-0. We are 4-0, 8-0. Pretty good. One more round to go. Let's see if we can get the trophy. This is our hand on the draw for the final round. It doesn't really have a game plan. And it has an awful lot of mana. I think we should just mulligan this and try and actually get a plan. Alright. This is the plan. And we'll keep this. What are we pitching here? Probably the second Lightning Bolt. Like maybe the Red Elemental Blast won't come in handy at all though. Whereas Lightning Bolt is basically always going to be doing something. We could always throw back the Dragon Engine and use the Engineer to go find the Dragon Engine. But we will need another artifact on the lines, but that's not necessarily that difficult for our deck to materialise. This is a tough call. It's one of these 3 cards that's got to go. In the blind, are we supposed to... Maybe we've just been swayed because our opponent's name is Second Siege Rhino, so I'm just thinking they're going to be some sort of Abzan deck. Oh, this is tough. I think in the blind it should be the Red Blast that goes here. If we had a Painter, that'd be different, but Lightning Bolts are always going to be doing stuff. Alright, a blue source. It's not the blue source you really want to start the game on though, is it? Excellent. A nice turn 1 play here. So if we've got a Daze for this, they'll have to then play a tap land, which would be pretty miserable for them. Let's see what they fancy here. Ooh, a Force of Will, pitching Force of Will. Alright, I'll take that. My little 1-mana Hymn to Turak. Powerful red card if ever there was one. A buy. Okay, so we're looking at some sort of bug deck here. Second Engineer is pretty tasty. They didn't daze the last one. Probably don't want to daze this one if they have one. Right, so we'll say yes to this one. We'll go and get ourselves a Breya's Apprentice. And we'll use this to weld between the engine and the Apprentice. Now we will need to find ourselves some more mana. If we could draw an Ancient Tomb or City of Traitors, that would be maybe not so good in the face of this, but an Uro. Okay, that's fine for now. We need to keep an eye on the amount of cards in their graveyard. Snuff out. Sure, our opponent's down to 2 cards in hand. Just filling up the graveyard a bunch here. So I think we are on casting this Engineer. think we go and get the Painter's Servant here because it's the harder... Actually, no, that's not true. We go and get the Soul-Guide Lantern, don't we? We can deal with the Uro next turn if we feel the need to. We'd quite like to draw another land. A Ponder, sure. So our opponent isn't putting Uro into play this turn because they've used one of their sources they would need to cast it. They can wasteland their own land to make sure they have enough things in their graveyard for the Uro. But obviously they need the mana to actually do the escape cost. So if we can get this Soul-Guide Lantern into play and remove this Uro, then I think our opponent's game plan is going to be impacted quite a lot. Because essentially what they're doing is they're training a bunch of 1-for-1s, even a 2-for-1 at one point, to the point where they can hopefully just play an Uro and just recoup that lost cards over the course of a few turns, whilst making massive inroads into our life total. If we can say no to that this turn, then we'll be in reasonable shape. Wish we had the red Element Blast instead of the Lightning Bolt, but there we are. Right, now we have a red Element Blast. Excellent. Plays Lotus Petal. We do have to get this Soul-Guide Lantern into play. And we'll sacrifice this. Get rid of the Uro. And then we need to untap with our guy so we can put the Breya's Apprentice in. But we're holding up Lightning Bolt and Pyroblast. I don't think the Lightning Bolt is going to be very relevant here. Another Uro. Okay. Kind of want to find another land. Like a Great Furnace would be beautiful right now. A 0 mana artifact, or some sort of artifact that we can pitch so that we can sacrifice our Soul-Guide Lantern to get rid of their Uro. Oh my god. That's the one, isn't it? Play this Lotus Petal. Exile your graveyard. Let's get back this Breya's Apprentice. Sacrificing this Lotus Petal. Alright, so the grind is a churning. We've still got the Pyroblast. We've still got the Lightning Bolt. Not really sure where the Lightning Bolt's going to come in here, but our opponent's got a lot of life for us to whittle down to. A Grief. Sure, you can take the Grief. With the trigger on a stack, I'm going to Lightning Bolt this, I think. Just keep it out of here. Alright. They can probably take the Pyroblast here, is what I would imagine. They don't want to give us the Dragon Engine. What have they got here? Life from Loam for their 1 polluted Delta. Fine. I don't care about that. So this is a tap and sacrifice to do the thing with it. So we're definitely attacking with the Thopter. Are we attacking with the Breya's Apprentice? I think we are this time around. And we'll play out this Grindstone. And then we can shuffle this into whatever we need to as the time comes. We could turn this into a Soul-Guide Lantern right now and stop our opponent from doing Life from Loam shenanigans. I don't hate that. Would I rather get rid of this Grindstone or this Thopter? If they have some sort of sweeper, I'd like to have an artifact in play still, so I'm going to get rid of the Thopter. Get rid of this Life from Loam. This stops them dredging into more Uros. Very much like to get this Phyrexian Dragon Engine into play. Once we can start doing stuff with that, then we're Ancestral Recall every turn, and our opponent isn't. Oh, a land. That's probably not what they wanted. Land is what we wanted, though. But it's not a very helpful one right now. Let's go attacks. Attack with the Breya's Apprentice. I might wasteland this with the trigger on the stack. They are doing exactly that. That's fine. I think we have to at least test them on that. So what we can do now is we can draw a card with the Soul-Guide Lantern if we want to. Let's see if we can find a land. We can do that in our opponent's turn because we already played our land for the turn. Or we can turn it into a guaranteed mana source of a Lotus Petal, which lets us play our Engineer. We kind of want to make sure that we... our Dragon Engine. We kind of want to make sure that we have an activation of Engineer up until our opponent's end step most of the time. And we'll see if we want this Lotus Petal or not. Our opponent might have things like Endurance in their deck, which should be quite good against what we're doing here. A Grief. Oh, this is excellent for us. This is a huge error from our opponent to play this. They know the cards in our hand. They know we can just get this, and then they're forced to take this Phyrexian Dragon Engine, which we want in our graveyard. Alright. I'm cracking there. Please, Delta, they got one card in hand. What is that card? A Reanimate Targeting Grief. Sure, that's fine by me. You can see no cards in our hand. And let's get a Phyrexian Dragon Engine. Alright, yeah. So they see the writing on the wall. We're going to be drawing multiple chunks of cards a turn. We're probably looking at we're looking at 3 to 4 additional cards every turn from that point. So, alright. Pretty good. Our opponent's mana base did not look like it would enjoy Magus of the Moon very much. They have Uros, so these things are certainly interesting. So this is like the bug scan deck. I think I've only played against it once. I'm not as familiar with it as I could be. So Lightning Bolt's going to be pretty good here. Furies, I don't think are where we necessarily want to be, though. Maybe Graveyard Hate is better here. Like Magus of the Moon looks pretty good. Maybe I'll have a little look, quickly Google a scam deck. Okay, Google tells me that they do not have any basic lands in their deck. So I'm going to play these Magus of the Moons. And what do I want to do about that? To fit that in. It's a Mox. Maybe it should be one of the Sagas, but yeah, maybe it should be one of the Sagas instead of the Mox. I'm just debating if I want these pieces of Graveyard Hate or not. They've got a lot of graveyard shenanigans. Maybe we'll trim a couple of blasts for a couple of extractions. Gives us a little bit of defense against like a turn 1 grief potentially. I don't know. I'm not very familiar with this deck because it's quite a new deck that I've not had a chance to play against much before. We have a turn 2 Magus of the Moon. That's pretty good. If we're right that our opponent has no basics in their deck, which the brief Google I did showed me several lists, none of them having the, what's it called, basic lands in. They're all, because they're playing Wasteland and all these things, they can't really afford to deal with a Magus, to have all these basics to get around Magus. We have this. We can hold up a red elemental blast. Or we can deploy a Grindstone. I think I'd rather hold up a red elemental blast. Tropical Island, no play. Okay. Oh wowzers, we even have a red blast for it. Clouds are aligning for us here. Let's try and Magus of the Moon. A lot of their removal stuff like Snuff Outs, they might struggle against this. Dress Down. Let's say no to this. We didn't need to count this one, really, did we? Because this will only stop it coming. Oh, wow, they're just straight up scooping. Oh, look at that. 5-0, 10-0. Pretty impressive stuff. This is the deck that just won a challenge. It's pretty stock, but yeah. Pretty happy with this one. Just seeing that our opponents said, "You're fat IRL." Not exactly a salty loser there. Okay, so yeah, pretty happy. 5-0, 10-0. Perfect league. Can't really argue with that. Yeah, sweet. Let's talk about the deck, I suppose. So this build felt really good. Obviously, you know, we didn't drop a single game. The Sokenzan didn't really come up. Now, we did get a little bit fortunate here and there, right? I also don't think we didn't need to counter that dress down, because as soon as we go to my end step, actually no, that's not true, because they had the dress down so that they could snuff out, is what they were planning there. That was why we countered that, so that we could stop the snuff out. But if they didn't have a snuff out, then as soon as it goes to their end step, it would go and they'd be locked underneath it. So we were right to counter that one. Even if it was a bit of an instinctive one, rather than waiting a few seconds and saying, actually, I should think about this one a bit more. But also, the dress down could draw them a card, which could potentially give them a force of will that they could use. So, for multiple reasons, we were right to counter that one. And it won us the game. So, this build obviously felt very good. I think the 3 Lightning Bolts, 3 Fury, I've seen those numbers tweaked a little bit in some of the red penny decks. Sometimes they go 4 and 2 in different manners, but they felt pretty good here. And if you're going to have one in your sideboard for dealing with creatures, having the extra Fury feels like a good one, because it just really smashes all the creatures. The 2 Saga Lanterns was interesting. And I think Saga Lantern is quite a useful card to get now. Like you saw in that other game against the Bug Scam deck, we were just looping Saga Lanterns a few times and it felt pretty potent. Even just the fact that you can loop it to get a little bit of value of it coming into play and nuking a card in their graveyard, and then you can cycle it out for your big thing like your Breya's Apprentice or your Phyrexian Dragon Engine. Those two feel real good. So I'm a big fan of having two of these. The Mox Opal didn't do the most. I think we got it for mana once, and the other time it was just a 0 mana thing that we could weld in and out, but that's fine still. I'm quite happy with the way that I mulliganed some hands that I thought needed a bit more play. I thought that we had a sort of playable 7, but I didn't think it was good enough, and we ended up going to a 5, and that was good enough. So nice that the deck and the player were aligned for once. Yeah, if you watch my channel, you know that I'm a fan of Painter. Even though I'm more on the mono white Painter, I do think red Painter is the better build at the end of the day. And there's a reason why mono red Painter has been the thing for so long. But I don't really know what else to say about this one. I like the fact that we have both Breyas and Phyrexian Dragon Engine, so we have more options for the grinding aspect of the game. And we outground some sort of control decks and things like that, so that was pretty potent. Now, we did get fortunate to not play against any decks with Emrakuls in. So we didn't have any opponents who kind of got to just ignore our combo. This deck struggles a little bit against things like Sneak and Show as a general rule, and we managed to dodge that. So, you do need to get lucky to win all of your games. And we did. But I think the games that we did play, we navigated this quite well, and the deck seems very finely tuned. I don't think I'd be too worried about Orcish Bowmasters playing this list either. They can pick off your Welder, and they might be able to pick off like a token from a Breya's. And when it comes to attacking, you need to be careful. If they've got a Bowmaster, they can kill a 2/2 with the ping and the 1/1. So you need to just keep that in mind when you're attacking. But again, you can play around that relatively well. So this deck's not too affected by what's changing in the meta, even though that wasn't a thing that we necessarily came up against today. As you can see, against a lot of the fairer decks, we can play a pretty strong fair game, but also with a backdoor to the oops, I win that we can set up very easily. So we played against a lot of matchups where that felt good. I normally feel a little bit uncomfortable playing these sorts of decks against the dedicated super duper fast combo decks, because it requires you to have really fast hands in order to deal with them, or at least set yourself up in a position where your Pyroblasts can actually interact with your opponent in the first few turns of the game. So those are the matchups I don't really like playing against that, and we kind of dodged those as well. So can't really complain about that. Sideboard-wise, I contemplated the Torpor Orb a few times but didn't go for it, and Googling to see how bad Magus the Moon was against our Scam opponent was a very good shout, and pretty much just won us that game. This is quite a lot of graveyard hate, but I can certainly understand why it's in there. Yeah, I don't really have any improvements I would suggest this deck other than maybe changing this Sokenzan into a mountain. But if you already run 2 Great Furnace, you've got like the 1 flex slot that you can run as the Sokenzan, I think. So that's probably fine. But yeah, not much else to say about this one other than 5-0, 10-0, right? Results mean everything, I suppose. So perfect deck. There you go. Go and play this. Go buy it, play it. It's great. If you're still here, please like, comment, and subscribe. And why not check out my Patreon? I've got a tier that's got regular articles going up on it, as well as a guide to Green Black Turbo Depths that is updated every month. So if you want to sort of check out what's going on with that, I'm currently tweaking it for next month's edition, adding in some of the things I've learned against playing against Bowmaster and how the format is changing right now. So there's going to be some quite significant changes to that primer for next month. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. And if you want to just say thanks for making loads of content that I watch, by all means, please subscribe to my Patreon. You just give me a couple of quid a month. Doesn't cost very much and helps me pay for my MOT, which has now failed on my car. But enough about that. It's been a bit of a day, but at least it's a good way to round it off before I go to bed. So thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.